Hello, this is George from George's Music Blog, and today I'm talking about, yes, I'm actually saying these words, the new Boards of Canada album, Inferno. Did we ever think this day would come? I don't know. I guess if you'd asked me last year, will we ever see a new Boards of Canada album? I'd have given it about 50-50. They released a mix in 2019, and there's been a handful of remixes over the years since Tomorrow's Harvest, so I hadn't completely given up hope. Anyway, here we are. So just in case you've been, people used to say living under a rock, but taking time away from being online feels like a necessary and healthy thing to do these days. So just in case your attention has been directed elsewhere for the last few months, yes, we have a brand new full-length album from everyone's favourite Scottish electronic music duo. Okay, there's a lot I want to talk about here, but maybe let's start with the hype campaign. Now, I don't normally engage with these kinds of things, not because I'm anti it or anything, but to be honest, I just wasn't previously in the habit of keeping up to date with new releases, so they used to just pass me by. I know Warp have done these kinds of campaigns before. They did something for Tomorrow's Harvest, I believe, and for Aphex they've done stuff like making links available that you can only access on Tor browser for people to go and download a special code or whatever. I'm sure it's all good fun if you're into that kind of stuff. But for me, I suppose there's no jeopardy involved. Like, whatever happens, there's going to be a new album at the end of it, which is ultimately all I'm really interested in at the end of the day. So yeah, while it can be easy to spend hours going down rabbit holes, trying to decode messages in VHS tapes or audio spectrograms, do you actually end up with anything different? Not that I'm knocking it at all. I get that it is the process itself that people find entertaining. And it is, fantastic that people are so passionate about the art that they love. So that is all good. Okay, so first there were the VHS tapes mailed to a few people on a Bleep subscriber list, I think. Then the mysterious posters in various cities, London and LA definitely, maybe some others. And then, of course, actual new music with an ambient track, which at that point was titled Tape 05. This is the first time I followed a release campaign like this in real time as a spectator, and it brought home to me just how popular boards have become. I mean, I know they've always had crossover appeal due to the more accessible nature of their sound in comparison to many of their Warp label mates, and with their sound being imitated so widely in and outside of electronic music, you can see their influences in post-rock, hip-hop, down-tempo, electronica, ambient, synthwave, etc. But I just think the outpouring of the hype, all the reaction videos, and some people seeming to treat this like it was the second coming of Christ, which is ironic given the subject matter of Inferno, all that shows just how widely they've permeated culture, or maybe it's just online culture. And it made me realise how much of an elevated place this music holds for so many people. And to be honest, I include myself there. So maybe it'd be worth me just laying out my stall in terms of where I stand with Boards of Canada. Now, I got into boards around 2001 or 2, shortly after discovering Aphex Twin and going down the whole rabbit hole of electronic music and Warp records. They became an absolute stalwart of my listening habits, as I'm sure they have been for you. I played those early albums, Music Has the Right and Geo Jaddy, endlessly, and they became part of my musical bedrock, basically. There was something in their music that was just so comforting, so appealing, so inspiring. It fit so many different circumstances to the point where I probably just took it for granted in a way. So much so that when Tomorrow's Harvest came out in 2013, and I almost feel weirdly ashamed to admit this now, I didn't even listen to it. I guess I just got out of the habit of listening to Boards of Canada at the time, and it was probably at least a year or even a couple before I decided to check it out. Once I did though, it was like rediscovering their music all over again, and I absolutely love that record. I don't know if that's controversial, maybe it was divisive for some fans, but then it seems like all their albums are divisive in some way. I'm sure there's different sub-cults of the Boards of Canada fan base that are formed around each of the different 5 albums. And maybe it's because their music is so profound and uncanny in the associations and feelings it stirs up. They're not the kind of act where I feel like I need loads of albums. Like, if you'd asked me before this year, would I rather have 10 more Boards of Canada albums or 10 more Square Pusher albums, I'd have said Square Pusher. Because each of them would be different and exciting, kind of innovative in some way. But if you'd asked me, would I rather have one more boards record or one more pusher, then I'd go boards. And honestly, if they retire after this one, then yeah, obviously part of me would be a bit gutted, but in another way, I'm happy with what we've got. A body of work that is 100% quality and kind of near perfect in some ways. Okay, that's enough about old stuff. What about Inferno? Well, it is Boards of Canada's 5th full-length album, released on Warp Records, of course. And interestingly, the credits on the sleeve state that while Boards of Canada are Mike Sandison and Marcus Owen, all tracks were written and produced by Mark Sandison. However, Marcus is credited with various things, including electronics, synthesizers, tape, sound design, films, artwork, photo collages, and more. So very interesting. I don't know any of the details behind that, but as far as I can see, that is the first time they split out the credits like that. Previous albums are all written and produced by Mike and Marcus, but it seems for whatever reason, Mike took the creative lead on this one. Anyway, I'd never have had an inkling of that if it weren't for that note. So in my view, you can't really sense from the music that the tracks were written just by one individual. And who knows, maybe it's always been the case that Mike is the lead songwriter and they just wanted to emphasize it this time. So my take on Inferno, I like it. I like it a lot and I'm loving it more with every listen. And at the point of filming this, yeah, I absolutely love it. It's hard to view it objectively, whatever that even means anyway, given music is subjective. And I don't need to try and view it objectively. I'm a fan of their music. So yeah, it's incredible in my opinion. It's got all the elements I love about their music, but it sounds different to previous albums. It's darker, more cinematic, more expansive, more high definition production. It's more literal thematically in many places. It is also 100% true to the ethos and development of their sound. They don't hold back, but they don't dumb it down or sell out. I'm going to keep saying they because I feel Boards is a gestalt entity regardless of whether one of them wrote the tracks. And I'm really not going to do justice to it in this video. But hey, this is an early take. I'm going to give my opinions mainly on the themes of the record and how some of the tracks strike me. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on the sound of the music because you can listen to it yourself, right? First, I'm just going to touch on a bit more of the reaction. Now, I hesitated about mentioning this kind of thing in the video as I don't know if it's really in the spirit of the channel, but what the fuck, engagement, right? So there is a review in The Guardian which gives Inferno 2 out of 5 stars. Now, I don't really care about that, and I think numerical ratings are kind of bullshit anyway. I mean, is the entirety of recorded music supposed to fit on a spectrum from 1 to 5? But I do take issue, with the content of the review, which describes the beats as wretchedly pedestrian, plodding along in dreary, funkless steps. Okay, if that's your perception, I guess. It does seem an odd quality to call out on a Boards record where the beats are kind of known to be plodding. Notwithstanding, the drum program is excellent as far as I'm concerned. The reviewer goes on to state that at least the brothers are expanding their sound with the inclusion of guitars. At the risk of sounding like a bit of a pedant, they used guitars in 2005, mate, so that's not exactly accurate. He also takes issue with the Hare Krishna sample, making it sound like they're laughing at Eastern religion. Oh, sorry, are we not allowed to laugh at religion now? He obviously hasn't listened to One Very Important Thought by Boards of Canada. Not that I think Inferno is laughing at religion anyway. I think it takes religion very seriously. He also goes on to suggest that the use of a sitar is lazy Orientalism. He wrongly attributes the sitar to deep time. Well, I think he means Blood in the Labyrinth. But anyway, now I'm not saying that no artist is ever guilty of lazy Orientalism, but really, is literally using a sitar enough to qualify? Are musicians only allowed to use instruments from their native country? But it is the reference to the track Amo Bishop Roden from the Beautiful Place Out in the Country EP being a proto-dubstep track, which I'm surprised the reviewer doesn't take to be an act of cultural appropriation. But anyway, that is the most ridiculous claim as far as I'm concerned. Now, obviously I write about music and it's the opposite of an exact science. Sometimes you're reaching, trying to make people see a connection, even at the very haziest vibes-based level, but Amo Bishop Roden being proto-dubstep, no, sorry, but no. Right, anyway, that's that out of the way. Back to the music. Now, Boards of Canada long seem to have had a fascination with cults. The aforementioned Amo Bishop Roden was heavily involved in the Branch Davidians, the group involved in the notorious Waco massacre. Their 2002 track, In a Beautiful Place Out in the Country, quite literally invites the listener to come out and live in a religious community in a beautiful place out in the country. GeoJaddy, is it GeoJaddy or GeoGaddy? I've heard lots of Americans seem to say GeoGaddy. Anyway, that album is famously littered with satanic imagery and references. For the record, never something that's been particularly obvious to me, but that's a digression for another day. To be fair, the silent closing track does extend that album's runtime to 66 minutes and 6 seconds, which is pretty unambiguous. So, cults, religion, belief in a higher power, all familiar themes for Boards of Canada, but on Inferno they are writ large. We're not talking about a hermit commune living in rural solitude. Now the cult has taken over the world and seems hell-bent on driving us all to the apocalypse. Tomorrow's harvest, of course, wore its concern for ecological collapse and ensuing desolation pretty openly through the cover art and track titles and the album title, of course. And given the sweep of geopolitical events since then, a worldwide pandemic, continued environmental degradation, and the proliferation of AI, to mention a few, I don't find it too much of a stretch to see Inferno as Boards of Canada's warning that we are all going to hell in a handcart. And if any cult is to blame, it's surely the cult of billionaires who are driving the handcart, hell-bent as they seem to be on bringing about the apocalypse through their rampant desire for resources. Now, before we get too much further into this, and maybe I'm feeling the effects of reading too many online comments and whatever else this week, but I would just like to say this is simply my relatively hot take. Most of it is just my opinion, my interpretation. Everyone's entitled to their own. Also, some people are going to love this record, some won't. Some might take offence at implied religious or political connotations. Some might feel it doesn't live up to some kind of expectations that they've built up. And so be it. Disagreeing is okay. Let's just keep that in mind. So, Inferno may not exactly be a light-hearted listening experience, but I have found it to be a deeply moving one and a reminder of why Boards of Canada hold such exalted status. They have always had a gift for melody, which remains undiminished here, and for creating moments of rich profundity, often from the barest of elements, a wavering synth line or half-heard voice. In the past, they've had a tendency towards the playful, and while there are no giggling children on Inferno, there is a sense that Boards are at least giving us what we want. Some of the vignettes sprinkled throughout Inferno, as there are sprinkled on all Boards records, sound so familiar I could swear some of the melodies have been repurposed from old tracks. Such is the comfort one can draw from these glimmers of familiarity. It offers hope that maybe all is not completely lost. So let's get into the music itself. Now, I'm viewing Inferno as a broad narrative consisting of 3 stages, or the 3 acts of classic storytelling: setup, confrontation, and resolution, in very broad terms. And where better to start than Prophecy at 1420 megahertz. 1420 megahertz is the frequency naturally emitted by hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, and therefore thought to be a likely frequency for alien communications, as it would be assumed to be familiar to all technologically advanced civilizations. Thanks Wikipedia for that. So, Boards set the scene of this story at the widest possible setting, the scale of the whole universe, but we are quickly beamed down to earth with the sound of a tribal beat and some kind of flute instrument, I think. The dramatic pause then at about 53 seconds in is very ear-catching. First ever Boards tune with a drop, maybe, and I think is intended to make sure we're all listening before they let rip with a guitar hook that could come from The Cure or something like that. Definitely strong 80s kind of goth rock, dream pop sort of vibes. It works perfectly in the context of the track, in my opinion, and the robotically treated voice closing out, Prophecy, is sampled from a lecture titled In the Beginning Was Consciousness, which actually sounds fascinating, to be honest, right on my street, and I want to watch the whole thing at some point. But anyway, utterances such as I am God, the ultimate resonance, don't exactly hold back in taking us to the heart of the matter, i.e. the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. It may not be subtle, and one could see it as an exaggerated version of their sound, but Boards have been imitated so many times, and after so long away, maybe they just wanted to remind everyone what the real thing sounds like. Oh yeah, and there is an excellent video accompanying the track. Absolutely sick. Love it. Age of Capricorn contains a voice spelling out various letters, some of which make the word Marbus, which is a name apparently given to the third Antichrist. There's theories you can find online about this, also relating to Osama bin Laden and Barack Obama. The letters from each of their names can be used to spell Marbus, depending on how you spell them. To be honest, when I first listened to it, I heard it as marvellous. I thought he was telling me I was marvellous, so took it to be something of a positive affirmation, although apparently it is more sinister than that, obviously. There is another voice much closer in your ear at the end of the piece, seemingly someone deep in prayer, although I think the sample is actually a televangelist. Either way, I find the whole track really moving and powerful. The wall of sound and layered voices, it's like you're being delivered or being reborn. There's also something unnervingly dystopian about it. Obviously, the Antichrist, the fact that it's a televangelist, and so one might question the sincerity of their supposed piety, and the fact that the age of Capricorn isn't due to commence for a few thousand years. Anything that makes me imagine human society in a few thousand years' time always kind of weirds me out. Now let's talk about Father and Son, which has some of the most extended segments of vocal sampling from nearly any Boards of Canada track I can recall, which I expect some will find a little bit of a turn off maybe. Someone has already tracked down the source material for this, and to be honest, it's pretty much what I imagined from first listening to the track. It seems to be someone who's turned against their own family due to a fixated belief. There's always something eerie about witnessing someone in the grip of a delusion. And obviously the clanging percussion and creepy synth line and the way the vocal is cut up and processed magnify that feeling. The result is actually a weirdly catchy track, although it is quite harsh on the ears. For me, there's always one track on every Boards of Canada album that sticks out as being a bit kind of harsher on the ears than all the rest. 6010 on Music Has the Right, Gyroscope on GeoGaddy, Jacquard's Causeway on Tomorrow's Harvest, so maybe Father and Son is the one for Inferno. Act 1 closes with the curtain drop of Somewhere Right Now in the Future, a classic Boards interlude of blurry organ notes steeped in emotional ambiguity, caught between melancholy and hopeful. Act 2 then opens with Naraka, which translates from Sanskrit as hell or something similar, giving us a dramatic start to the darkest section of the record. Synth chords and bass kick are used sparingly to build an atmosphere of such tension that when the Hare Krishna chanting emerges, distorted and pitch shifted, it sounds incongruously sinister. It is an absolute perler of a track, and when they reintroduce that synth a little after 2 minutes in, it is just fucking sublime. The Word Becomes Flesh features another extended sample of what sounds like an educational video of someone narrating the development of an embryo. Old educational videos being absolute classic Boards territory, but rather than making you feel nostalgic for bored afternoons at school, the choice here feels very on theme. Now, I understand the source material is in fact referring to a chicken embryo, but not being aware of that, one could assume it was referring to a human. Fetal development and the question of when an embryo becomes a person are obviously integral to the issue of abortion, which is hugely consequential in the context of religious belief. And it's the first time this occurred to me actually, but maybe the brothers had been watching a lot of The Handmaid's Tale while making this album, or reading the book, of course. Again, there's something unsettling about the harmonic texture of the track and the way the vocals are chopped to align with the stuttering rhythm. Very dystopian, despite the jaunty tone of the narration. Into the Magic Land leads with guitars and has an almost post-rock feel to it. Blood in the Labyrinth, absolutely loving these track titles by the way. I know they're a little bit over the top, but so much better than having tracks called like Z297 Synth Bit 5 or whatever. Probably why I don't normally bother remembering track titles. There's something in the rhythm and the composition that bears more than a passing resemblance to Peacock Tail off Campfire Head Phase. It's so lush, and again has that classic Boards thing of being kind of comforting but sad at the same time. The vocal samples as well, less intelligible this time, just fit perfectly with the melodic development and the vibe, which is kind of woozy, also menacing. Pure class. I haven't actually troubled to look up where these samples come from, and I almost don't want to in a way. Back in the day, this stuff would take years to surface, but now it is available within days or even hours. Obviously, there's advantages to that. getting to see behind the curtain, kind of, and getting a bit of an insight, but it does take some of the mystery out of the music. So then the final third act begins with Deep Time, which was originally released as Tape 05. Again, it has all the classic board's ingredients, grainy synth textures that come in and out of focus, a sense of climax and profundity, although induced by what exactly, it's unclear. An incredible example of life imitating art, I suppose. This track was used as audio to accompany staticky footage of US flags flying and landscape seen from a helicopter in a tweet posted from the official White House account, I believe. I suppose there must be a Boards fan somewhere in the White House social media team who saw the obvious potential in this piece of music to make some fairly unremarkable footage look as though it signified something, of great importance. Again, had a very dystopian feel to it. And the hilarious thing, or terrifying, depending on how you look at it, about all this is that thinking of the themes of Inferno, religious fervour, organised religion, in particular Christianity, cults, the end of the world, or the downfall of civilization as we know it, all of these find a nexus in Trump. Now, I really don't want to talk about Trump more than is necessary, so I'll just say this. One of the ways he's managed to retain power has been by appealing to the Christian right in the US, a religion for which the concept of end times plays a significant role, and the grip Trump has on his own party is highly akin to that of a cult leader. And for many who are opposed to Trump, he signifies everything that is wrong with the world: warmongering, fossil fuel consuming, rampant capitalism and greed. So, Christian fundamentalism, cult leaders, end times, it all runs through Trump. So the fact that a track from this record was used by someone in his administration to soundtrack what was basically propaganda either makes perfect sense or is evidence that we're all just living in a fucking simulation. Okay, back to the album, and there's some pretty dark moments in this final third. The ominous computerized voice at the start of All Reason Departs, referring to the initiation of a new eon and a great war that must be fought. The angry mob noises on the process and dystopian sounding announcer referencing atrocities. But these are perhaps the darkest moments before the final resolution, as the penultimate closing track, You Retreat in Time and Space, which I sense is already becoming a bit of a fan favourite, and which is basically a Boards of Canada ballad. Those gently loping beats, the layers and layers of melody, of course, but it's the little flourishes like the trill at 253 that are quintessentially Boards. Of all the tracks, this is one that could genuinely have sounded at home on a much earlier album, with the same childlike naivety of those early works, which is a feeling largely absent from Inferno. That would have been the more kind of cutesy way to end the album. As to me, I Saw Through Platonia feels very much like a transitional piece rather than climactic. To me, it induces a strong feeling of uncertainty, as though we're moving from one phase to another. That is in contrast, though, to the heartbeat sound. Could be a little Pink Floyd reference, or 2001: A Space Odyssey, maybe. Anyway, that obviously grounds the whole piece and the whole album experience, to be honest, like you are returning to your physicality after this cosmic voyage that you've been on. Now, there's several tracks I haven't mentioned. I love them all, to be honest, and there are so many moments that just reminded me why I love Boards of Canada. Most of all, I'd say it's their way with melodies, which are so emotionally rich, and the way their pieces build such vivid moods. There's tracks here, and even just little moments that I could just live in for a month, if you know what I mean. In the past, I would have ascribed this feeling to nostalgia. Nostalgia is such a powerful force, and appealing to nostalgia can be a very surefire way to move people. Sometimes it's done in a really lame, obvious way. Boards of Canada always did it really well, I think, and for people who are from a certain generation, obviously a certain sound palette being associated with the media of their childhood. But now it's like we've come full circle. The sound that Boards of Canada mined so deeply on those early releases, grainy synths, scratchy beats, old PBS samples, and a kind of naive techno optimism, that has been thoroughly imitated and done to death almost by so many acts in the last 20 years. It doesn't really induce nostalgia in me anymore. I listened to Music Has the Right to Children the other day for the first time in ages, and rather than the nostalgic associations it used to generate, it just made me feel nostalgic for listening to Boards of Canada when I was a teenager. Anyway, on Inferno, I feel Boards have moved on a little bit from nostalgia. Obviously there's an aesthetic which is very self-consciously retro, but they're not relying on nostalgia to say something meaningful or move you emotionally. Instead, they do this by very vividly evoking a sense of sometimes dread or existential angst and many more besides. Anyway, I've said more than enough. I can't believe this album's only been out for a week and I'm still only just getting to know it. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know. Please give me a like if you're still watching at this point and check out my channel for more of the same. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.